Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about grief and how we cope through grief. You may experience grief pre and post bereavement. A grief can start before someone has passed away. It can be felt by the person who is dying themselves or the people that are around them that love them. It might be a bit of an odd, strange, confusing time when you're feeling grief when the person is still with you, but it is an experience that is normal because you are feeling that sense of understanding that loss is going to happen in your life. Things probably are changing around you, and that's when we can do lots of things that perhaps can help with the grief that you're experiencing now and in the future. Your life plans, expectations might have changed in what your life is going to be for the person that's dying and for the person that's caring for them. So it's important to recognise that grief is very normal, and what we can do is we can do some interventions that might help during that time of grieving. Managing through grief can be supported by doing things that will help you create memories or working through the grief with the person that you're going to lose or who have lost. So today we're going to look at those, and we're going to share some of those experiences that we've had with clients ourselves and with ideas that might help you for moving forwards. Managing through grief can be quite difficult, and the earlier you can prepare for it, the better it might be. So we've come up with some ideas to share with you, some interventions that might help you work through your grief. We've got Bridget here today who's going to give us some ideas of things that we can do to help us with our grief. Thank you, Bridget, for coming along today. I've got a couple of questions, so if we go through them. Firstly, could you just tell us a little bit about how is it helpful for families and friends to prepare for a loss?
Yeah, it's often when we get the shock that somebody has got a life-limiting condition, there's a tendency to just focus on the illness and the short period they may have, and actually we forget about the person, all they've achieved, and the whole person. Our lives are like a book full of chapters, and we don't want to be left with just the end chapter. So often when we work post-bereavement, when people have died, people are stuck with only the memories of the last few weeks or months of that person's life. Actually, it's important to celebrate all the chapters and every part of somebody's life.
Absolutely. And I can see you've got quite a lot of photos here today, and like photo albums. How does photos help, and how should we be using them?
Well, Kate, we have a whole array of photographs. We either take photographs, some of us have them in boxes without any dates or stories attached to them. These days we take photographs that end up in the cloud and we never look at them. But actually, the photographs tell our whole life story. So it's really important and special for families at this stage to share those stories that might not have been told before, and that can be done pre-death, when people can do that as a family activity, or people can do it and prepare it, and it can be something that can be handed on to somebody after the person has passed away.
Absolutely. Looking at photos are always very emotional and can help us kind of reflect on parts of our lives. So I can understand why photos are important to people.
And there's so many different ways you can display your photographs. As you can see, I have a whole sort of variety of albums that you can buy. If you're very creative, you can do them in a very creative way. But the important thing is to perhaps put dates and little captions around what happened on that day, because it is your life story and it's something that people will want to remember and share. And as I say, you can be as creative or as you like. You can even cut out sort of photographs from flowers and decorate. And it can actually be a nice activity. When somebody's very poorly, they don't always have the energy to do things, but you can sit with family quietly and do that. So it's a nice activity to do.
Yeah. And sometimes I find that when somebody who is bereaved and are looking at their photos, it can actually help them if they're struggling with their emotions, because it helps them to have a cry and to reflect on their lives they've had as well. You know, it gives them a chance to have that space for them and the person they've lost.
Absolutely. And as I said earlier, often we only remember the person those last few months when they were very sick and they look very different. And it's important to look back at the photographs of their whole life. And the pictures when they were laughing on holiday or you were sharing special moments.
Yeah. So would you say it's useful to write things down? Do you think that sharing perhaps cards and messages with writing, is that important?
Absolutely. There are many ways you can share your story, as I say, through photographs, but some people prefer to write. You can type up your whole life story if you have the energy or you'd like to do that. Or there are things you can buy, like books. This is one in particular, Mother's Memories. And it just prompts you with things like, where were you born? What school did you go to? What was your favourite toy? What were some of the games you played? So you don't have to write loads. So it's quite a nice way if you don't like to write a lot. Again, it's important to write it rather than type it, because there's something very special and personal about people's handwriting. The other thing, some people just do what I call love cards, and they can do little cards that say things to people like, my special memory of you was when you graduated from school, or I was very proud of you when you took your stabilisers off and first rode a bike. And you can just do a box full of little love cards as a memory for somebody.
And is it always helpful to have that cards being given out once somebody has died? Is that something that you feel would be helpful for the bereaved?
Some people very much want to write letters and cards to leave their loved ones. My only advice around that would be to be very careful, not to be too prescriptive. Like, try not to put a card, say, for somebody's wedding day and saying, although I can't be with you, I will be so proud when you walk up the aisle with the man or the woman of your dreams. Because that is putting huge pressure on your loved one to fulfil something that might not happen, you know. So it's better to say things like, I will always remember your smile, you will go on in life to achieve all you want to achieve. So keep it very broad. That would be the only thing I'd say if you were going to do a letter or a card to somebody.
That's really important. And you mentioned the handwriting. I think I've worked with somebody who has found a recipe of their loved one, and not only was it special because it was their special cake that they make, but it's also the handwriting of them. It was mum's handwriting too, which was really important to them. It was something they wanted to keep, and it helped them to remember those moments with their loved one.
Absolutely. And again, we spoke about pre-grief. You know, it's sometimes good to perhaps get someone to take a photograph of you and mum making that Victoria sponge, and the flour and the eggshells everywhere, and then for the recipe to be written out, and then a book to be made, and then that's a lovely thing to inherit afterwards, and special memories attached to that.
Yeah. So what about if you're the person who is dying and you're worried about the loved ones around you, then they're obviously going to go through that grief. How can you feel reassured they're going to be looked after? Is there something you can suggest?
I met a very brave lady once who had this lovely idea. She gathered together a few of her really trusted friends, and they went away on holiday. And she chose each of them she had young children. She chose each of them to be one of Mummy's angels. and she then put that in a letter for her children, and it was like, Sally is, I've left all my kisses and hugs with Aunt Sally, so if ever you want a kiss or a hug, all you have to do is go to Sally. Another one was Auntie Tracy. She is your angel who, if ever you have a worry, you're going to have a breakup from a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or you need a shoulder to cry on, you can go to Auntie Tracy for wisdom and support. Or it might be Jenny loves shopping. She's your shopping angel. When you want to go and buy a new school uniform or prom dress, she's the angel to turn to who'll shop until you drop. And actually that not only gave the mum reassurance that she'd got these angels in place for her children, it was a comfort to the children because they knew who they could turn to, but also Dad, who was going to become a single dad and was worried about all these milestones that he didn't know how he was going to cope with. And that was a little bit of pre-planning and work, and how it then worked afterwards. It was very, very beautiful.
Oh, sounds amazing. And you're talking about memories and using those memories to help us sort of go through grief. A lot of people have spoke about memory boxes, and people have brought up memory boxes. Can you tell us a bit more about memory box? What might you put in it? What might it look like?
Absolutely. You can get a plain box and just decorate it with photographs yourself, or there are all kinds of nice boxes you can buy online, or you can buy online or in shops. And they are what they say, a box full of your memories, treasured memories. A few examples might be, you might have gone to the theatre with somebody, so you could have the music to the theatre you went to see. You might have enjoyed a holiday and beaches were really special to you both, so you could put showers in. You might like skimming stones, so you could put a skimming stone in. Seeds are lovely. I love forget-me-not seeds. It's a lovely way to remind somebody, because they'll come up each season. So perhaps put some forget-me-not seeds. Elephants are lovely because they don't forget. Elephants always remember. So maybe, or any animal if you enjoyed going to the zoo with people. Even down to a leaf, if you love the autumn and crunching through the leaves. I always love conkers. My daughter ran up to me when she was very little and said, "Mummy, I found a wooden stone." So in my memory box I will have a conker, and that will be special for both of us to remember. So you basically fill it with all your memories.
You make it personal to the person you're working with.
Absolutely.
And I think it's important to mention music is really emotional and can be quite used on the memory side. So that sounds good to have music put in there as well.
Absolutely. And also with the photographs, we talked about downloading your photographs, but actually you can do digital copies, and you can do side shows and actually add the music that's really poignant and conjures up memories for family members. So you can be very creative with doing it digitally.
And just lastly, there's one more question here, Bridget. Can you give us some suggestions? And obviously a lot of these work can be done post or pre bereavement, but could you give us some examples of things you could do to perhaps have a memory of somebody when they have passed away, something you might want to do with someone if you're working through grief?
Absolutely. A lot of people use the loved one's clothes to make teddy bears or cushions, and that's a lovely way of having somebody's clothes, because it reminds you of what they used to wear and the smell and the feel of that person. So they're a lovely way. I also know of a granddad who loved being in the shed. He loved all his sawdust and screwdrivers and all the things in his man cave, if you like. So when he passed away, Grandma made a chest for the grandchildren, and it literally had Grandpa's overalls in, a little pot of paint, some oil, screwdrivers and sawdust and all kinds of things that just reminded them of Grandad, which was lovely. The other thing that lots of people can do is when somebody passes, often if it's been a cremation and maybe the ashes have been scattered, they have nowhere to actually go on anniversaries or birthdays or Christmas time. And what I suggest people can have a go at doing is painting a stone. And you can paint it with things that reminds you of the person, or it might just be a bright stone with lots of pink dots because your loved one loved pink. But anything that connects you with that person. And then you can varnish them. And I don't suggest planting trees in gardens in memory of somebody, because if you move, you can't take a tree with you. But if it's a shrub in a nice pot, then on those anniversaries, you can, as a family or an individual, make a stone and then just lay it in the pot. And that's another lovely way of remembering your loved ones.
And some of these examples, and you don't have to be good at arts and crafts, you can just, with the example of the toolbox, they're things people can do without needing to be in that mindset. And therapeutic to make.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you, Bridget. That was really, really informative, and we do hope that that's been really helpful in terms of suggestions of what you can do when you're working through grief. What we want to do is just send you with the last few thoughts for today. Remember, grief is normal and that it might be experienced before you've lost somebody.
Often our lives we feel is pre-planned and mapped out, and it can become a real shock and something you need to process when suddenly all your hopes, your dreams and plans are suddenly having to change. Maybe you've not got the retirement you'd planned for, or you're unable to go on those holidays that you used to enjoy together. So that's when the grief and the loss and the bereavement of what life used to look like can start.
Creating memories can be something that can be really helpful when you're working through grief. And if you need further support, remember to signpost people or refer people on to bereavement support. Hopefully today this has been really helpful for you to look at things you could do if you're working with someone who's grieving or yourself is grieving.